Hello beautiful perception trainers people, and welcome back to another video. So today I have another You Asked, I Answered, and this one is how do I tell the difference between toxic fuel and true motivation? And I think I've talked about this before, probably a million other times, but so just to kind of recap, toxic motivation is everything that we do from a place of this is what I need to do to be approved of by others. This is what I need to do to be approved of by society. This childlike perspective that says, I am not capable of figuring it out for my own self, what my true path is, what the right thing for me to do is, what the right stumbling blocks for me are, what the right lessons for me are, what the right path that I need to go down that's going to be a challenge, that's going to force me to learn a whole bunch of things that I didn't know before, that this is who I am and this is what I'm supposed to express, and all of this that doesn't have a connection to that, that is not working from that place of self-awareness, and this is my path and I'm working from the inside out, but rather is identified with that child self that says, I need to be loved and approved of by other people before I'm going to be provided for. And without that love and approval of others, I'm going to die. Okay? That's toxic fuel. My conditioning is toxic fuel. What I learned in my childhood of who I have to be and who I have to not be, and what I have to do and what I am not allowed to do, and what's acceptable in the world and what isn't. And this is who I have to be in order to be loved by someone outside of myself, and therefore to be provided for. That's toxic fuel. Versus the inner motivation of, I just know this is my path. And like I said, sometimes I just know this is my path doesn't lead to the easiest thing, doesn't lead to the most straightforward thing. It leads us down a path of complete nervous system shutdown because it totally contradicts our conditioning. It leads us down a path of struggle and the hero's journey and not knowing and dark night of the soul. But it's still us knowing this is the path. How do we tell the difference between these two things? And the first thing is, don't expect yourself to be able to tell the difference between these two things. There's no simple trick for how you're going to know that I'm working from internal motivation versus I'm working from I think this is going to get me approved of. A lot of the time, in the beginning, how you're going to figure this out is in hindsight. You're going to look back on what you just did. And you're going to say, okay, did I really do that because I wanted to do that? And it was important to me, and it felt good to me in my internal self? Or did I do that because my nervous system was freaking out and telling me if I don't do this, I'm going to die? Or was I doing it because I really believed I was going to get approval and praise and love? Right? And that's a question we can really only answer for ourselves. But asking ourselves that question is the first step in figuring out the difference between toxic fuel, which is consensus reality fuel, and true motivation. What was I thinking was going to happen when I went down that path? What was I expecting? Second tool, when you're about to do something, when you're about to pursue something, when you're about to express something, when you're about to not do something, when you're about to not express something, either way, you can ask yourself, if no one was around to approve or disapprove of me, if no one was around, if I was the only person on the planet, and there was no chance of being approved of or disapproved of through doing what I'm about to do or not doing what I'm about to do, would I still want to do it or not want to do it? If there was no chance of an external validation, if there was no chance of an external repercussion, would I still want to do it or not do it? That's a massively important question we can always ask ourselves. And again, you're going to be like, yeah, but that's not real, right? I can get the approval, or especially I'm going to get rejected. Just because I can imagine that I'm not going to get rejected doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to do what you know is true motivation or not do what you know is toxic. Okay? This is not going to be easy, but this video is about how do we start to become aware. Awareness is not going to make it easy, Awareness is just going to make you aware. All right? So asking yourself again, if there was no chance of approval and if there was no chance of rejection, would I still be motivated to do or not do this thing? And like I say, that's a really important question we can ask ourselves. Third thing is really asking yourself what you want for your life. If, again, overarching big picture, right? So we can ask ourselves these things for little things, and then we can ask ourselves the exact same question. If there was no one around to approve of me and no one around to disapprove of me, overarchingly, what would I like to pursue? What would I like to express? Who would I be if there was just no one around to tell me it was wrong or no one around to tell me it was right? If I kind of, and this can be a thought experiment that we do over and over and over again, if I suspend this whole rule book I have of what a good life is and what a good person is and what a bad life is and what a bad person is, if I start to just say there's no one around to judge me, even if you have to pretend there's no God, there's no universe, there's nothing to judge you, it's just you, what would you want to pursue? What would you want to fill your life with? And then starting to question the stories that tell you you can't have that life. Like really, really questioning that. And then again, at the same time, I really want to put a caveat in here that sometimes when we ask ourselves, what would I do if it was just me? We're going to be like, nothing. I don't want to do anything. I'm exhausted. I just want to quit life and I don't want to have to do freaking anything. There's that. Or it's going to be like, I'm just going to eat and drink and have sex and do all these things. And if no one's here to judge me, I'm just going to be high and like do all this crazy stuff like teenage rebellion. And both of those two things are going to come up. Okay, I don't want to do anything, I'm just exhausted. Or that I just want to live this life of debauchery, and if I really let myself do this, I would just be a destructive, horrible person on the planet. And I deeply, fundamentally believe that my true self is just horrible and chaotic and destructive, and that's who I would be. And this is part of working through what is true motivation and what is toxic fuel, is that we have to love these parts of ourselves that got so traumatized, that got so belittled, that got so berated, that got so hurt, that you're just exhausted now because you're so disconnected from who you are and what you want that you don't even know. You're just exhausted. Or you're just so desperate for pleasure, because that's what that is. The parts of you that want to do these self-destructive, crazy behaviors are the parts of you that are starving for pleasure, true pleasure, and the parts of you that are starving for approval and that something to feel good. And this is where these self-love practices come in. That if you think to yourself, what would I do if there was no rules, and you can't think of anything, like you don't have any idea, you don't know, or all you think of is these self-sabotaging bad things, that is a call for you to be so deeply compassionate for yourself. That you have lost contact with your real self so much because of the shame, the abandonment, the rejection, the conditioning that you've been through. That all you know is nothing or self-abusive behaviors that are at least pleasurable in the moment or that get you attention. And that is deeply painful. And the fact that you're there is not your fault. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That doesn't mean you don't have real motivation. That doesn't mean your real self is dead and you'll never find it. That doesn't mean that you're actually just fundamentally evil and awful and irresponsible and a terrible person. No. It just means your true self, your true motivation got so shamed, you had to abandon yourself so deeply that now you've lost connection. And that's not your fault. And the first step to reconnecting with that part of yourself, as easy or as simple or as too simple as this might sound, is validating that that's how you feel right now. Okay? If you're in this place of I have no idea, or all I can think of are just debauchery things, that is not your fault. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you've lost it. It means that you were so deeply conditioned against yourself that you had to bury it that deep, and that you haven't had true pleasure in maybe your entire life. So these coping, self-sabotage, scapegoat things are all you have for how to get attention and love, all you have for how to get a pleasurable feeling for a second. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. That's trauma. And again, we start with, this is not my fault. Okay? So how do I tell the difference between toxic motivation and real motivation? If there were no one else, would you still want to or not want to? And if you don't know, or if you can't think of things, or it's all just pain, start with compassion for yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not evil. You're not bad. You just weren't given the opportunity to be your real self. You were never given the opportunity to be who you want to be. You were shamed or blamed or rejected so badly, right? That you had to bury yourself. And so we start by making it safe for you to be in that place by saying it's okay. It's okay. It's not my fault. I didn't choose this. There's nothing wrong with me. And it's not going to feel like much. I know that. But that's the process, okay? Slow and steady. So that's that. I hope that helped. And I'll see you in the next video.